It was supposed to be the job of a lifetime. At least, that's what Leah thought the moment she stepped into the lavish mansion on the outskirts of town. The man who owned the place was powerful, rich, and mysterious, but the pay was beyond anything she could dream of, enough to change her family's life forever. She never suspected that her first day would be her last. Leah's phone call to her family was full of excitement. "I'm here, Mom. I've got the job," she said, her voice buzzing with hope. But that was the last time anyone ever heard from her. The next morning, her mother's frantic calls went unanswered. Then came the authorities, investigating for a while, only to drop the case with a swift, professional indifference that sent chills through the air. "Another runaway," they said, brushing it off. "It happens all the time." But this wasn't just a case of a young girl running off for a better life. Leah had vanished without a trace, as if the earth had swallowed her whole. Days turned into weeks, and still no word. The family put up posters, talked to anyone who might have seen her, but it was as if Leah had never existed. Those who had once praised her for being brave enough to chase her dreams quickly silenced their whispers when the questions turned serious. They weren't curious anymore. The town had moved on. Her younger sister, Maya, couldn't. Leah's disappearance gnawed at Maya's insides, a hollow pit of unanswered questions. The life she once knew had been torn apart, and no one was willing to acknowledge the truth. Something wasn't right. Maya spent nights staring at Leah's empty bed, wondering if the life her sister had dreamed of was nothing but a cruel trap set by a man who preyed on the innocent. She had to know what happened to her sister. The authorities were no help, and the rumors about the man who owned the mansion only grew darker and more sinister with each passing day. Some said he had a fetish for young women. Others whispered that he was a psychopath who had something much worse planned for them. But Maya refused to believe the stories. Then, one night, she found a letter, Leah's letter, hidden inside an old family journal. Maya's hands trembled as she unfolded the paper, her eyes scanning the words that Leah had written just before leaving. "The job is better than I could have imagined," Leah had written. "The man who hired me is mysterious but kind. His mansion is everything I've dreamed of. I'll be back soon, don't worry about me. This is just the beginning." Those words should have reassured Maya, but instead, they chilled her to the bone. Leah had written them, yet she never came back. Maya knew she couldn't sit around anymore. She couldn't wait for someone else to act. Something had happened to her sister, and Maya was determined to find out what it was, no matter the cost. She went to the county where Leah had gone to work, each step filled with the sting of anger and a sense of dread creeping into her chest. This wasn't just about finding her sister anymore. This was about revenge. Maya was going to make someone pay for what happened to Leah. The night she arrived in the town, Maya wasted no time. She headed straight for the mansion. Rumors and whispers followed her, stories of women who had disappeared after starting work there. Some said they ran off with men. Others said they were sold into something far worse. Maya's skin crawled as she passed the dark windows of the mansion, her heart pounding in her chest. She found someone willing to talk, an old woman who had worked there as a maid years ago. "He doesn't just hire girls for jobs, dear. He traps them," the woman said, her voice trembling with fear. "He keeps them in cages, like animals." Maya's stomach churned, but the old woman wasn't done. "He's sick, you hear me? The man who runs that place, he's not just some businessman. He's a monster. A predator." A predator? It didn't make sense. It couldn't. But Maya had to know more. She didn't believe the rumors. Not yet. She spent the next few days blending in, working at a local diner to keep an eye on things, all the while pretending she was just another young woman looking for a fresh start. As the days dragged on, her anger built. The pain of losing her sister threatened to consume her, and she realized she couldn't stop now. She had to expose the man behind it all. One evening, Maya found herself standing outside the mansion once more, but this time, she wasn't just watching from the shadows. She had a plan. With a deep breath, she walked up to the front door, her heart hammering in her chest. The man had hired Leah, and she was about to show him that he had made a terrible mistake. Maya stood before the mansion's towering gates, the iron bars glistening in the moonlight. The house loomed behind them, casting an eerie shadow across the ground. Her breath was shallow, a mixture of fear and anger rising within her chest. She couldn't afford to hesitate. She had come this far, and there was no turning back now. The night was unnaturally quiet as Maya approached the front door. She adjusted the collar of her jacket, hiding her face as much as she could. She'd been told that the man rarely entertained guests. The mansion, a sprawling estate, was isolated from the rest of the town, deliberately secluded. Few people ever came near it, and even fewer left with their minds intact. A loud crack echoed through the silence as Maya's knuckles struck the heavy oak door. She forced herself to stand tall, her heartbeat echoing in her ears as the sound of footsteps approached from inside. The door swung open with a creak, revealing a tall man dressed in a well-fitted suit, his expression cold but calculating. His eyes seemed to scrutinize Maya before he spoke. "Yes?" His voice was smooth, almost too polite, as though he had rehearsed the words 1,000 times. Maya swallowed her nerves and stepped forward, keeping her voice steady. "I'm here for the job. I heard you were hiring." The man didn't flinch, but there was a subtle shift in his posture, something dangerous in the way he eyed her. "You've come a long way for a job, haven't you? Are you sure you're ready for what this place offers?" Maya nodded, fighting to keep her composure. "I'm ready. I need the work." The man studied her for a moment, his gaze piercing, before stepping aside to let her in. Maya walked through the door, feeling the weight of the mansion's oppressive silence. As she crossed the threshold, a sense of unease crawled up her spine. She had been warned, but nothing could have prepared her for the chilling atmosphere inside. The floors were polished marble, the walls adorned with grand portraits of stern-looking individuals whose eyes seemed to follow her every move. The house was beautiful, too beautiful, in fact. It felt like a gilded cage. "Follow me," the man said, his voice cold again. He led her down a narrow hallway, away from the grandiose entrance and deeper into the house. Maya felt her stomach twist as they walked further from the front door. The atmosphere grew heavier with each step, and an unsettling feeling settled in her chest. They stopped in front of a small door at the end of the hallway, which the man opened with a quiet click. "This is where you'll begin," he said. His tone was businesslike, detached. Inside, the room was dimly lit, the walls lined with high-end furniture and ornate decorations. But Maya's attention was immediately drawn to the metal cages in the corner, each one housing a woman, young, beautiful, and eerily still. Some of them sat on the floor, staring blankly ahead, while others lay huddled in corners, as though hiding from some unseen threat. Maya's blood ran cold as the pieces began to fall into place. The rumors weren't rumors at all. This was real. The man wasn't just employing women. He was keeping them captive. "These are your colleagues," the man said, his voice almost clinical as he gestured toward the cages. "You'll be joining them shortly. If you're lucky, you'll earn your freedom. If not, well, we'll see how things unfold." Maya's mind raced as the room spun around her. The women in the cages had a dead look in their eyes. They were no longer human in the way they moved, or rather, didn't move. They were shells of who they once were, broken beyond repair. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoed from down the hall, followed by the sound of something heavy dragging across the floor. The man's face shifted slightly, but his expression remained impassive. Maya's instincts screamed at her to run, but she was frozen in place. "What's happening?" she managed to ask, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to sound confident. The man's lips curled into a twisted smile. "It's time for one of them to entertain me." Before Maya could react, he reached for a lever on the wall, and a door in the far corner of the room opened. The soft, rhythmic sounds of heavy breathing and snarling filled the air. Maya turned to see a massive cage below ground, one that she hadn't noticed earlier. From it emerged a monstrous creature, a wild animal of some kind, its eyes glowing with hunger. The man selected one of the women from the cages, his gaze cold and detached, and tossed her into the pit with the animal. Maya's heart stopped as she watched in horror. The woman screamed, her terror deafening, but it was too late. The creature lunged at her, and Maya could only watch in horror as the woman's struggles were met with a brutal end. The sound of tearing flesh and the woman's final scream filled the room. The man sat back, his eyes gleaming with dark satisfaction. This is my entertainment. This is what I enjoy. Watching them fight for their lives, until there's nothing left of them. Maya felt the bile rise in her throat as she turned away, her entire body shaking. This was not the job she had signed up for. This was not the future she had imagined. But now, there was no escape. She had walked right into the lion's den. And she was going to have to fight her way out. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she stumbled backward, her mind scrambling to process the scene she had just witnessed. The man's cold, indifferent eyes were fixed on her, as though he were watching her reaction with a twisted sense of amusement. "You look shocked," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "It's not what you expected, is it? But that's the price of being here. The price of your freedom." He gestured to the woman still trapped in the pit with the animal. "If you want to survive, you'll have to learn how to please me, or end up like her." Maya's stomach turned, and her legs shook beneath her. The weight of her decision, coming here, putting herself in this man's reach, crushed her, and for a fleeting moment, she almost wished she could turn back, run out the door and never look back. But that wasn't an option anymore. Not now. Not after seeing what had happened to her sister and so many others. With every ounce of strength she could muster, Maya straightened up and forced herself to look the man in the eye. Her voice came out sharp, defiant, despite the terror threatening to overtake her. "I'm not here for you to play your sick games. I'm here to find my sister." For a moment, there was silence. Then the man let out a low chuckle, a sound that sent a shiver down Maya's spine. "You're brave," he said, his tone colder now, but foolish. "You think you're different from the rest of them, don't you? That you'll find your sister and walk out of here unscathed? No one leaves. Not unless I say so." Maya's anger flared, and she fought back the wave of fear threatening to choke her. She couldn't let him see her weakness. "Not now. I'll find her. And when I do, you'll regret ever crossing paths with me." The man's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before he regained his composure. "We'll see about that," he said ominously. He turned and walked toward the door, his shoes clicking sharply against the marble floor. "Get some rest," he called over his shoulder. "You'll need it." Maya stood frozen for a moment, the words echoing in her ears. Rest? How could she rest after everything she had seen? But she knew she couldn't let the man see the depth of her fear. She had to stay alert, stay focused. There had to be a way to escape this nightmare. As the man left the room, Maya's gaze fell back to the cages. The women inside were silent, their eyes empty, lifeless. They had been here far longer than she had, broken by the twisted system the man had created. Maya's heart ached for them. She couldn't let them become her fate, too. She had to find a way out. For herself. For Leah. For all of them. Hours later, when the house finally grew quiet, Maya slipped from the small room she had been assigned to. The mansion seemed even more ominous in the dead of night, the walls heavy with secrets. Every creak of the floorboards made her jump, every flicker of the candlelight cast shadows that seemed to move on their own. She made her way down the hall toward the room where she had first seen the cages. Her heart raced in her chest, her mind sharp with the need to find a way to free herself, and the others. When she reached the room, she saw that the man had left the door unlocked. A sense of urgency flooded her veins. She couldn't waste any time. But as she crept inside, she noticed something strange. The cages, the women inside, they were gone. Vanished. Maya's breath caught in her throat. Where had they gone? Were they taken somewhere else? Or had something worse happened to them? A noise from behind startled her, and she spun around to find the man standing in the doorway, a malicious grin spreading across his face. "I see you've been snooping around," he said, his voice dark and chilling. "You think you can escape? That you can free them? You're in my world now, little girl. And in my world, no one gets out alive." Maya's chest tightened as she backed away, her mind racing for an escape plan. She had been so careful, so sure that she could outsmart him. But now, standing face to face with the man who controlled everything, she realized just how dangerous her situation truly was. The man stepped forward, closing the door behind him with a soft click. "It's time you learned the rules," he said, his smile growing wider. "You can either join them, or you can be like them. Broken. Forgotten." Maya's heart thundered in her chest as she realized the true nature of the nightmare she had walked into. There was no escape. No way out. This was a place where people came to disappear, never to be heard from again. Her thoughts raced back to Leah. Her sister had come here full of hope, thinking this would be the job that changed everything. But now, Leah was gone, just another broken soul lost in the man's twisted world. Maya's eyes flashed with a new determination. If she was going to survive, she had to play his game. She had to become part of his sickening world in order to find her sister and take down the man who had created it all. The man stepped closer, his breath hot on her face. "So, which will it be?" he asked, his voice low and menacing. "Will you play along, or will you become one of them?" Maya's fists clenched at her sides. She could feel the anger bubbling up inside her, threatening to consume her. She wasn't going to let him win. Not now. Not ever. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said through gritted teeth, her voice steady, her gaze unwavering. "But I will get out of here. And when I do, you will regret the day you ever crossed paths with me." The man laughed, a low, mocking sound that echoed in the empty room. "We'll see," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "We'll see." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Maya standing in the cold silence, her mind spinning with plans, her heart filled with revenge. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she sat in the cold, dimly lit room, the sounds of footsteps echoing through the long hallways of the mansion. Her mind was in overdrive, calculating, planning, searching for any possible way to escape this nightmare. She had been here long enough to realize that the mansion was not just a prison, it was a fortress. The walls held secrets, and the gates were locked to keep people in, not out. The man's chilling words replayed in her mind. "You can either join them, or you can become one of them. Broken. Forgotten." He had made his intentions clear, and Maya had no intention of becoming just another face lost in this twisted hell. But how could she escape when she didn't even know where she was? The mansion was massive, and it felt as though it was built with the sole purpose of trapping people like her. Her thoughts kept returning to the cages, the women locked away in those cold, metal enclosures, their spirits crushed beneath the weight of the man's cruelty. But Maya's sister, Leah, she couldn't stop thinking about her. Had she been one of the women in the cages? Had she already fallen victim to the man's monstrous games? No. Maya refused to believe that. Leah had been strong, determined to make a better life for herself. She wasn't just another victim. Maya would find her, and she would make sure that this man, this monster, paid for what he had done. With every passing minute, the mansion's heavy silence weighed more heavily on her. But there was something else too, a whisper, a flicker of movement in the corner of her eye. Maya wasn't alone. She knew it. She had to be careful. Someone was watching. After a long stretch of silence, Maya stood up and approached the small window in her room. Peering through the cracked glass, she could barely make out the outline of the mansion's sprawling grounds, but her thoughts were interrupted by a faint tapping on the door. She froze. Who was that? The tapping came again, slower this time. It wasn't the man. This wasn't part of his usual routine. Maya's pulse quickened. Whoever it was, they weren't there to harm her. She could sense it. She reached for the door handle and opened it cautiously. Standing in the hallway, looking over her shoulder as if making sure no one was watching, was a woman, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. She was about Maya's age, and her clothes were tattered, as if she had been here for a long time. The woman's voice was barely a whisper. "I know who you're looking for," she said, her words trembling. "I can help you find your sister." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She could barely believe it. "You know where she is?" she asked urgently. The woman nodded, glancing around nervously. "I can't talk here. Not safely. Meet me at the back entrance in an hour. I'll tell you everything. But you have to be careful. He's always watching." Before Maya could respond, the woman vanished into the shadows of the hallway, leaving her standing there in stunned silence. Was this a trap? Or was this the break she had been waiting for? Maya's mind raced as she weighed her options. She didn't have time to waste. If this woman knew something about Leah, she had to take the risk. An hour later, Maya found herself standing in the darkened corner of the mansion's back entrance, her heart racing as she glanced over her shoulder. Every noise, every rustle in the shadows, felt amplified in the silence. She could feel her own breath echoing in her ears, and the weight of the world pressed down on her chest. She had no idea what to expect, but she couldn't back out now. Leah was out there somewhere, and this was the only lead she had. The soft click of a door opening reached her ears, and Maya whipped around, her pulse quickening. The woman from earlier stepped out of the shadows, her eyes darting nervously. She was trembling, her hands wringing together as if she were trying to hold herself together. "I'm sorry, I can't stay long," the woman said quickly, her voice shaky. "He's dangerous. I don't know how much time we have." Maya nodded urgently, her eyes never leaving the woman's face. "Tell me where she is. Please. I need." The woman hesitated, then swallowed hard. "I know who you're talking about. Your sister, right? I remember her. She was the new girl, the one who thought she was going to change her life. But she was too smart for him. Too smart to just disappear. So he made her an example." Maya's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean? What did he do to her?" The woman looked down, her eyes filled with sorrow. "He keeps them in cages. But not like you think. He feeds them to the animals." Maya's blood ran cold. Her throat tightened. She had heard rumors, whispers, but hearing it out loud was something else entirely. No. Not Leah. She couldn't have. Shoo. The woman's hand shot up, silencing her. "You have to listen. He doesn't just kill them. He does something else. He makes them fight for their lives, throws them in the cage with his wild animals, and watches them." Maya's eyes widened in horror. "No," she whispered, shaking her head as if she could will the words away. "That's not possible. My sister, she wouldn't let that happen." "She didn't have a choice," the woman said, her voice thick with emotion. "They never do. Once you're here, you're his." Maya stepped back, trying to process what she was hearing. She had to find her sister. She couldn't let her go through that. She wouldn't. "Where is she? Please. Tell me. Where can I find her? The woman's eyes darted nervously toward the mansion. I don't know if I can say this. It's too risky. But there's one place. The basement. It's where he keeps the ones he wants to break. The ones who don't bend to his will. Maya's heart skipped. The basement. Of course. She had seen a trapdoor leading to the lower levels when she'd first entered the mansion. She hadn't dared go near it, but now, it felt like her only hope. The woman grabbed Maya's arm urgently. You don't know what you're walking into. It's not just animals. He has machines, technology, things you can't even imagine. And he's got eyes everywhere. Be careful. Maya nodded, her mind spinning. Thank you, she said softly. Thank you for telling me. I'll be careful. I'll find her. As the woman turned to leave, she looked back one last time, her face filled with regret. Don't be too late, she said, her voice breaking. There's not much time. And with that, she disappeared into the shadows, leaving Maya standing in the dark, her heart racing as the next phase of her plan began to take shape. The mansion was eerily quiet, as if the entire house were holding its breath. Maya's footsteps echoed on the cold, marble floor as she made her way through the winding hallways. The faint glimmer of the moonlight shining through the narrow windows cast long, stretching shadows across the floors. Her body was tense, each step deliberate, but her mind raced at 1,000 miles per hour. She was getting closer, she could feel it in her bones. Her sister, Leah, was somewhere beneath this mansion, and she was going to find her. The woman had said the basement. It made sense now. The trapdoor she had seen earlier wasn't just an old, forgotten part of the mansion, it was the key to everything. The door that led into the darkness, into the very heart of the nightmare. Maya reached the hallway where she had first noticed the trapdoor. Her pulse quickened. It was hidden beneath an ornate rug in a corner of the room, almost invisible to anyone who wasn't actively searching for it. With shaking hands, she lifted the rug and found the metal handle, cold to the touch. She pulled it, the door creaking open, revealing a narrow staircase that led down into a suffocating blackness. For a moment, Maya hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back. To run. But Leah was down there. She had to be. And she couldn't stop now. Not when she was so close. Maya took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage she had left, and stepped into the darkness. The stairs creaked beneath her weight as she descended, the air growing heavier with each step. The smell of dampness and decay filled her nostrils, and she could almost taste the thick, oppressive atmosphere. At the bottom of the stairs, the faint glow of a single light bulb flickered above her. It cast long, eerie shadows on the cold concrete walls. The basement felt endless, like a maze of corridors, each one more suffocating than the last. Maya paused at the bottom of the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. There was a chill in the air, the kind that made your skin crawl. She could hear the distant sound of something heavy moving, an echo that reverberated through the stone walls. The noise sent a shiver down her spine. She wasn't alone. Forcing herself to move, Maya crept forward, every step measured and cautious. The farther she went, the darker it became, the air thicker, as though the basement itself was swallowing her whole. She stopped when she reached a heavy, steel door at the end of the hallway. The rusted metal was cold under her fingertips, and there was something about it, something that made her stomach twist with dread. Behind this door was where the man kept them. She knew it without needing to see. Maya's hand trembled as she reached for the handle, her mind flashing to the horrible stories the woman had told her. The woman had warned her about what lay beyond. The cages. The animals. The man's sick, twisted games. With a sharp tug, the door creaked open, revealing a vast underground chamber. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of animal musk and fear. The room was dimly lit by flickering overhead lights, casting long shadows that seemed to writhe like living things. And there, in the far corner of the room, were the cages. Maya's breath caught in her throat. There were women inside, just as the woman had said. Their faces were hollow, their eyes vacant. Some sat on the cold concrete floor, while others huddled in the corners, rocking back and forth as if trying to erase the memory of whatever horrors they had endured. The cages were small, barely enough room for a person to stand, and they were made of cold, unforgiving steel. Maya's chest tightened as she realized just how long these women had been trapped in this hellish place. And then, her eyes landed on something else. A cage at the far end of the room, its door ajar. Maya's heart skipped a beat. Leah. There, lying on the floor, her body bruised and bloodied, was her sister. Maya's breath caught in her throat. Leah's once beautiful face was now marked with the scars of suffering. Her clothes were torn, and her body was trembling, but she was alive. Maya's legs moved before she could think, rushing toward her sister's cage. She didn't care about the danger anymore. Nothing mattered but getting Leah out. But just as her hand reached the bars, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway, cold and purposeful. Maya froze. He was coming. The man. Her heart slammed against her ribcage, and panic surged through her. She couldn't get caught. Not now. Not when she was so close. She ducked down behind one of the other cages, holding her breath as the footsteps grew louder. He entered the room, his presence chilling. The door slammed behind him with a finality that sent a wave of dread through Maya. The man's silhouette was barely visible in the low light, but she could hear him breathing, slow, methodical, like a predator stalking its prey. Maya's heart skipped a beat as she watched him move toward Leah's cage, his footsteps deliberate. He reached down and lifted her sister's limp body, dragging her out of the cage as if she were nothing more than a rag doll. Maya clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. This was it. This was her chance. With all the strength she could muster, Maya bolted from her hiding spot, charging toward the man. She couldn't think about the consequences. She couldn't think about the dangers. She had to save her sister. But just as she lunged toward him, the man turned around, his face twisted in a malicious grin. He was waiting for her. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice a low, mocking whisper. "Now you're mine too." Maya's blood turned to ice.